Have you ever stared at a massive, complex project and just felt completely overwhelmed before you even start? Yeah, we've all been there. You are definitely not alone. Whether you're launching a huge new enterprise software platform, building commercial infrastructure, or even rolling out a global marketing campaign, bridging that gap between a high-level strategy and a finished reality, it requires serious execution at every single step. So welcome to this explainer. Think of this as your survival guide. Today, we're demystifying technical project management and finance frameworks. We're going to strip away all that theoretical jargon and transform it into a highly practical roadmap. We are literally turning the abstract art of execution into an exact science. Let's get into it.
Organization is absolutely everything, right? So here is the exact blueprint for our success today. We're going to cover 4 main sections: the master plan, show me the money, expecting the unexpected, and finally, is it worth it? Okay, let's dive into this with section 1, the master plan, planning and scheduling. So, every great initiative requires defining our objectives with crystal clarity. Because if you don't know exactly what the finish line looks like, well, you're never going to cross it. To get to that finish line, we use one of the most absolutely crucial strategic frameworks in operations, the work breakdown structure, or WBS. Let's be honest, staring at a massive, ambiguous goal is basically a fast track to operational bottlenecks and some serious scope creep. But a work breakdown structure, it translates that daunting monster of a goal into clear, actionable tasks just by chopping it up into bite-sized, manageable pieces. So instead of a vague launch platform, it becomes architect the database, design the user interface, stress test security protocols, and deploy the beta. Suddenly, the impossible becomes this streamlined, totally doable checklist. You conquer the bottleneck not by brute force, but by systematically taking it apart, piece by piece. Now, let's see how this actually builds into a real schedule. Once we have our bite-sized pieces, we have to map them out against time. This is where we visually lay out these tasks, using tools like Gantt charts to keep everything properly, rigorously scheduled. Notice how week 1 is entirely dedicated to defining objectives, which then gives us the foundation to build that work breakdown structure in week 2. By week 3, we're plugging those tasks right into our Gantt chart. It's essentially a visual timeline showing exactly when tasks start, when they end, and those critical dependencies or tasks overlap. It completely transforms a static to-do list into a dynamic, living heartbeat for your project, making sure every single team member knows exactly where they fit into the broader timeline.
All right, moving on to section 2. Show me the money, budgeting for projects. Because every well-planned task now needs fuel to actually happen.
We've got our timeline, but time is only half the equation, right? Every task needs capital to actually cross that finish line. Budgeting ultimately comes down to estimating costs and strategic resource allocation. Now, come on, we've all had that moment where a quick weekend DIY project suddenly requires like 4 trips to the hardware store and costs triple what we expected. In professional project management, we literally cannot afford that kind of margin of error. Proper resource allocation is about preparing for reality, not just blind optimism. It means carefully calculating the labor, the physical materials, and rigorously tracking the administrative overhead for every single task we just defined. It's about making absolutely sure the right personnel and the right tools are deployed at exactly the right moment.
And this brilliantly illustrates a vital concept that really separates amateur execution from professional management. You've got your core project costs, the baseline capital you know for sure you'll need. But then, check out that distinct separate slice, the contingency fund. Now, why does contingency planning require its own dedicated slice of the pie? Well, because it acts as a financial shock absorber. It is definitely not a slush fund for sloppy planning. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a meticulously calculated reserve designed to safeguard your entire budget against things like market price fluctuations, unexpected supply chain delays, or sudden necessary changes in scope. Without this safeguard, one single macro-level misstep can derail the whole shebang.
Which brings us to section 3, expecting the unexpected, project risk management. Because keeping the project alive when things inevitably go wrong is where the real conflict begins. You see, managing risk isn't about being overly pessimistic. It's an active, step-by-step defense mechanism. Let's walk through this chronological procedure. Step 1 is identifying risks. You have to forecast potential failure points, everything from a key vendor going bankrupt to a sudden shift in regulatory compliance. Then step 2 is assessing the impact. Because let's face it, not all risks are created equal. You have to weigh the probability of a risk happening against the severity of the damage it would cause. A minor software bug? That's a localized annoyance. A massive data breach? Total systemic catastrophe. Finally, step 3 is developing risk response strategies. Are you going to avoid the risk, mitigate it,
transfer it to a third party, or just accept it. And keep in mind, mitigation strategies usually carry their own costs, which have to be factored right back into your budget. By planning this out in advance, when disaster does strike, you don't panic. You just execute the protocol. So we arrive at our final phase, Section 4. Is it worth it? Financial analysis techniques. This is the ultimate test of evaluating our project's true worth. We've planned the work, we've budgeted the costs, and we've shielded ourselves from risk, but now we have to prove it makes financial sense. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it compares the big three financial metrics side by side. These are the analytical tools that actually convince stakeholders to give you the green light. First up, we have NPV, or net present value, measuring absolute value. This accounts for opportunity cost and the time value of money. It basically calculates all your projected future cash flows and discounts them back to today's value, telling you exactly how much actual wealth the project creates. Next is IRR, the internal rate of return, which measures capital efficiency as a percentage rate. If your project has an IRR, say 15%, you can directly compare that yield against alternative investments. And finally, the payback period. This measures time. It answers the absolute most pressing question any sponsor has: how long until we recover our initial costs? By combining these three, absolute value, percentage rate, and time, you create a truly bulletproof financial argument. So, the really crucial point here is that none of these operational elements exist in a vacuum. Let's tie this all together, shall we? A clear plan, chopped into manageable pieces and placed on a dynamic timeline, tells you exactly what to do. That plan then allows you to accurately estimate costs and strategically allocate resources, building a realistic budget complete with a calculated financial shock absorber. Having that structured foundation helps you actively identify and respond to risks without totally derailing your team or your capital. And ultimately, this entire organized effort justifies its strategic intent by delivering a financial payoff that you can rigorously prove using NPV, IRR, and the payback period. It is just a beautiful, continuous, logical flow from high-level strategy right down to a highly optimized reality. We've stripped away the theory and built a highly practical roadmap today. You now understand the strategic language of objectives, budgets, risks, and financial returns. You've seen exactly how these components interlock, like a giant puzzle to guarantee successful execution. The blueprint is squarely in your hands. Your toolkit is completely ready to go. So the only question left for you is, what will your next project be? Thanks so much for exploring this with us, and I seriously cannot wait to see what you build next.